All right, so Matt, what type of ghost has the best hearing?
I don't know.
The eeriest one.
That was bad.
You liked it. Don't lie.
My joke was better.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the graveyard. Thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Adam.
And my name's Matt.
Now, pull up a tombstone or settle into your casket and get comfortable because this is Graveyard Tales. All right, everybody, here we are again. Matt, how you doing tonight, brother?
I'm good. I'm good. Hopefully, y'all can't hear this, but if you can, my little yappy dog is downstairs barking. I'm here at the house by myself, and he's decided he wants to yap. So you may just have some yappy noise in the background. I'll try to edit most of it out. But I apologize. Noise.
Yeah.
They love it.
Oh, I guess.
They want to hear that.
Well, first of all, we wanted to tell you guys, we've had a buddy of ours helping us out with some research and stuff. Goes by the name of Jeff. I won't give out last names.
Come on.
No, we don't do that here. We don't do that here.
Address, social security number.
Right, telephone number. But he helps us out with research, which is, it's a big help for Matt and I because we get things going here, and with, Matt's other job and with my stuff, my editing and all this other stuff, we get behind, we just do. And so it helps to have somebody that helps us collate the data, we'll say. Well, he and his wife just had a wedding anniversary, so we wanted to say happy anniversary to Jeff and his wife, and we hope it was a good one, and we appreciate all your help.
Yay, happy anniversary. Yeah, we really do. We appreciate the help. You have no idea when you start digging through some of this stuff. You're bound to miss something, and
sure.
Every week Jeff will find some gem or nugget that we've both missed.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a huge help. So, thanks, Jeff, for that, and happy anniversary to the both of y'all.
Right. Another thing we wanted to mention is, as always, we'll say we're proud to be a part of the Podbelly Network. Go check them out, podbelly.com. You can find new podcasts to listen to, and you can find out how to record and edit your own podcast if you'd like to get started. They have that over there, so go to podbelly.com. We are starting to, for our $10 plus patrons, we're starting to slowly unveil some video. So you get to watch us record the episode. So it's like, it basically the episode, but then you get to see our dumb faces and all of my wild hand gestures and stuff like that. And so it's not every episode, but we're trying to get some episodes randomly out there on Patreon.
Yeah, you do get to see us screw up,
mm-hmm.
even more so than we do on the actual show. You get to
right.
see how we repeat things and how we say things wrong, and we get lost when we're talking. Or we get on some tangent that has nothing to do with the show, and then we have to cut it out because it's made the show so stinking long.
Right.
You get all of that. And so many people had asked for that, which, I mean, I get it. I like to go back and watch, the outtakes from movies and TV shows and that kind of stuff. So I get it. It's fun, but it's also the stuff that maybe we weren't meaning for you to see. But we're happy if you want it. We're happy to be able to give it to you. And it just took us a while to get the technology to be able to do it and do it well.
Right. We weren't going to put anything out that was
just crap.
Right. I mean, that's not
beyond our regular stuff.
Yeah. We have a level of crap that we're not willing to go below. And for a while, we were way too below that crap level. So now that we've got it up at least to par with that crap level, we're going to try to be putting that out on a regular basis. Don't know how many episodes. It's not going to be every episode we do, but we're going to try to get several of them up there on Patreon for our $10 plus patrons. So if you're a $10 plus patron, be prepared for that. You may have already seen one or two of these. If you are not a patron, go over there to patreon.com and look us up and become a patron, and you can get some of these bonus videos that we're doing and all that. And it's just fun. The episodes are different. They're not always the same like we would on our main channel. We're a little looser, and the topics a little shorter and a broader scope than what we would put into a Graveyard Tales episode.
Oh yeah, yeah, and of course, if you sign up, it helps the show, but you get to see stuff like the Graveyard Tales poster that hangs behind me fall in the middle of recording. Right, you get that kind of stuff. So
right, so it's fun. But on that note, Matt, why don't you tell us, what are we talking about tonight, brother?
Okay, tonight we are going to another haunted prison, and these are great. I mean, these are fantastic shows to research because they have some of the best stories. And when you think about all of the pain, all of the anguish, all of the death, all of the sometimes torture that has occurred in prisons, over the last centuries, you can understand why these old, broken down, abandoned prisons are just a haven for paranormal activity. So tonight, Adam and I are going to look at the Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah.
And man, this place has got some really awesome stories.
Oh, yeah.
And much like a lot of the prisons we talk about, Adam, it's got some really great but gruesome history.
Yes, it does. And it's been around for so long that the history is just, I mean, I was digging, Matt, and I was like, I've got a ton of the history already, and I could keep going. So we could have done like a 2-hour episode just on the history and the layout and everything of the Eastern State Penitentiary, but I decided that's not what people are here for. They're here to get through Adam's history to get on to Matt's ghost stories. So I decided we wouldn't do a 2-hour history podcast here. But we do need to talk about a little bit of it to put Matt's hauntings into perspective.
Oh, yeah.
So the penitentiary is located at 2027 Fairmont Avenue between Corinthian Avenue and North 22nd Street in the Fairmont section of the city. And it was operational from 1829 until 1971. So it was operational for a long time.
Yeah, a long time and pretty recent as far as, closed prisons go.
Right, exactly. Now, at its completion, and Matt and I were talking about this before we started recording, and this is was a very interesting tidbit that we found, but at its completion, the building was the largest and most expensive public structure ever erected in the United States.
Wow. I mean, I saw that too. That is amazing.
Yeah. To be, first of all, just at any building to have that status as that is currently, at its time, the largest and most expensive public structure. But for it to be a prison, it was like, holy cow.
Right. I know. Isn't that weird?
It is weird.
That just means that they channeled that much money into the construction of a prison.
Mm-hmm.
So either that says a lot for the criminal activity of the time. We got to build a new prison.
Right.
You know, these people are going insane. We got to find a place to stick them. You know, or it was just, you know, they had the money to push and create a structure that would be conducive to what their ultimate goal was.
Sure.
And I think Adam's probably going to touch on that.
Right. Now, the prison currently, which I know Matt will talk about more here in a little bit, but the prison is currently a U.S. National Historic Landmark, and it's open to the public as a museum for tours 7 days a week, 12 months a year. And you can go from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. So they're always running tours at this place.
Yeah.
And we do have some information on the tours and talking to some people there. But let's get into the history, why it was built, and all that stuff. Now, Eastern State Penitentiary website had a lot of information on it. And as always, you can go to our sources, find those links, and get more in depth into this history and research if you would like. But we're going to talk about what they had to say. Now, in the 1700s, most prisons were just large holding pens. So people would get put in there and wait to be sentenced. And you see this on movies and things all the time from back in that era. You know, you just got thrown into a big, you know, a giant room, and there were hundreds of other people in there.
Yeah, just a big cage.
Yeah, exactly. And groups of adults and kids, that everybody, every walk of life was in this big holding cell, and they were accused of everything from petty theft all the way up to murderers in the same room.
Yeah, can you imagine stealing a pack of gum and bunking up next to a guy that killed 3 people?
Yeah.
What are you in for? I stole some double mint.
Yeah. Hi, my name's Ed Gein. Nice to meet you.
No.
So.
Oh yeah, can you imagine?
No. But I mean, that's what it was.
16-year-old sitting in there because he stole some candy and he's sitting next to Ed Gein or something. I mean, good Lord.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it was. It was, you know, everybody and their mama literally were in the prisons at the time, you know. And so they say that they sorted out their own affairs behind locked doors. So you can only imagine what that means.
Oh yeah. It means a lot of different stuff.
Yeah, it means a lot of different stuff to a lot of different people. Now, guards and overseers were known to abuse the prisoners. You know, flogging, whipping. They would get heavy fines, and some were even executed. And these were typical punishments for that era.
You know, I had an acquaintance who said this, and it always stuck with me. And it wasn't a thing where he just said it, and it was one of those things that resonated inside me whenever I think about these old prisons. That there was a mindset at one time with the crews that would run these prisons, all the way from the head wardens down to the run of the mill guards, that people didn't, you know, you go to prison as punishment.
Right.
But there was a mindset that you went to prison for punishment. And that's what he said. And I was like, I've never thought of it that way. But when you think of it in that perspective, then you can wrap your head around some of the things that we've talked about in other shows and that we're going to talk about tonight happened within these walls, you know, decades ago, because of that mindset, the idea that people went to prison for punishment.
Right.
Not
exactly.
as punishment.
Exactly. And that's a great way to look at it when you're looking at any penitentiary that was around the time that we're talking about now, because that's what happened. I mean, like you said, went in there and then they'd get flogged or beaten randomly throughout the day, and it was just a way of life. If you were in there, that's just the way it was.
And regardless of what your crime in the world was.
Yes. Yep. Exactly.
I mean, they were equal opportunity punishers.
Yeah. Right.
If you were that guy that went in there because you stole $5 or you had a bunch of unpaid parking tickets, as this guy over here that was head of a street gang, or robbed somebody at gunpoint, or heaven forbid murdered someone, it didn't matter. You were here, and this is the way it worked.
Right, exactly. You got put here for something, and we don't care. We're still beating you. Mm-hmm. Well, in 1787, there was a group of well-known and powerful Philadelphians, and they met at the home of Benjamin Franklin to discuss the current state of criminal justice, exactly what we were just talking about.
Right.
They met there to talk about this, and these people, they were members of the newly formed Philadelphia Society for Alleviating the Miseries of Public Prisons. A long title, but that's what they were.
They were good at that.
Yep. Well, give yourself a long, long title, and people are tired of saying it halfway through. But they expressed growing concern about the conditions in American and European prisons. Rightfully so, after, knowing what we've just talked about. Well, Dr. Benjamin Rush and others in the society hope to outlaw public punishment and replace the current overcrowded and corrupt prison system with a system of private solitary confinement. And I have things to say about that too, but I'm not gonna. Now, Rush proposed a radical idea to build a true penitentiary, a prison designed to inspire genuine regret and penitence in the hearts of people convicted of crimes. Now, the concept grew from, quote, Enlightenment thinking of the time, but no government had successfully carried out such a program. Now, it took the society more than 30 years to convince the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to build the kind of prison it suggested. Now, a revolutionary new building on farmland outside of Philadelphia is what they were suggesting. So, Eastern State Penitentiary, unlike other prisons, did not use corporal punishment and strived, at least in theory, to end the ill treatment of prisoners. So, their mindset was let's get rid of the beatings and the punishment that you get while you're in prison, which is, I'm all for that. Let's keep it a little more humane and stop just beating everybody that's in there. And they wanted to go for the solitary confinement. So you're by yourself in there. Well, the massive new prison opened in 1829, and it was soon the most famous prison in the world because of what we talked about. The big, very expensive, and their ideas on how to rehabilitate and punish people. Now, Eastern State aimed to move beyond simple punishments, and instead it attempted to encourage the people incarcerated within its walls to reflect and change. Now, the penitentiary utilized a Quaker-inspired system, and Quaker inspiration, I don't know how that could go wrong.
They fed them oatmeal.
Yeah, exactly. Here, just eat this oatmeal and you'll be good.
Feel inspired in the morning.
Right. But they use this Quaker-inspired system of isolation and labor to achieve this end. Now, the early system was pretty strict, they say. To prevent distraction, knowledge of the building, and even mild interaction with the guards, prisoners wore hoods anytime they were outside their cells. So if you left your cell, you had to be hooded. So you couldn't see anything. You couldn't see anybody. You wouldn't know where you're at, and you're relying on the guard to drag you around where you were going.
So they treated you like a racehorse.
Yeah.
You know, they put blinders on you.
Pretty much.
So that you wouldn't be distracted. I honestly, not that I agree with it, but I can see the philosophy behind it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that if you don't see what's going on around you, then you're not really worried about it. But of course, you know, we know you completely isolate somebody, you take away all their senses like that, with the exception of sound and touch, and you can hear and feel a lot of stuff going on, and then your imagination starts to run wild.
Mm-hmm. And you create more problems than you fix by doing that.
Right. Yeah.
But we're not the show for fixing prison systems. We're just the show that tells you about all the crap that happened at one. So we'll keep going here. Now, proponents of the system believed that its isolation would allow prisoners to consider their behavior and the ugliness of their crimes, ultimately leading to genuine penitence for their actions.
Yeah. They put them in a big timeout.
Yeah, pretty much. Here, put your
Think
timeout.
about what you did.
Put your timeout hat on, cover your eyes, and go sit over there. Now, this is when the new word penitentiary actually started, because it means penitence. You know, you're in this penitentiary for penitence. So, you know, at least they came up with a new word. I mean,
and yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
But I guess I just never considered it. I mean, it makes perfect sense. I never thought about where they came up with the word penitentiary.
Right. And
I mean, but it's interesting.
It's not a word that is in the common vernacular nowadays.
True.
You know, we just say jail or we might say the pen.
The pen, yeah.
We don't say penitentiary, so we don't really think about why it got that name. But that's why it got that name.
I always liked the pokey.
Yeah. You know where that came from. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Well, Eastern State's design was also revolutionary. Now, its 7 earliest cell blocks may represent the first modern building in the United States. It was designed by British-born architect John Haviland. I'm going to say Haviland. It might not be.
Nah, I think you're square on that one.
John Haviland. Now, the penitentiary originally consisted of 7 cell blocks that radiated from a central surveillance rotunda. So if you go Google search this place, and you Google search like floor plan or layout or whatever, you can see this. So it's got like a little circular dot in the center there, and then it's got little basically wards that come off of it. And we'll talk about it a little more later, but they kind of radiated out as they got built on. They would build more and more onto this. Well, in this concept, each prisoner had their own private cell, centrally heated with running water, a flush toilet, and a skylight. And they were adjacent to each cell was a private outdoor exercise yard. So you could go out of your cell and into this exercise yard, and it had 10-foot high walls, and it was yours. So you would never see anybody else. Now you go out into a common area, and everybody kind of works out and everything in one yard. This, you had your own because they didn't want you seeing anybody else. Now, this modern design was pretty impressive, they say, for the time, because even the White House, with the occupant at the time being Andrew Jackson, he had no running water, and it was still heated by coal-burning stoves. So this penitentiary had a lot of new stuff. Centrally heated, running water. I mean, it pretty fancy if it had been a hotel rather than a prison.
Mm-hmm.
Now, despite these innovations, the cells were simple and sparse, and the only light came from a small skylight, and prisoners could only occupy their time with the Bible or honest work which they considered like shoemaking or weaving. And the interior of the penitentiary resembled a church with its 30-foot barrel-vaulted hallways and tall arched windows. And they say that contrasted a lot with the outside, because the outside had that typical medieval Gothic facade that you would assume a prison would have. And it was built to intimidate and imply that there was a lot of physical punishment that took place behind the walls, even though there wasn't. This was a place of everybody was in solitary. You never saw anybody but the guards, and you rarely saw them. It was interesting, and it was new for the time.
Yeah, but it was a place of reform.
Yes.
So it wasn't a place of punishment necessarily. I mean, the punishment was that you went there. Mm-hmm. And this was a way to try to actually get people back to be productive members of society.
Right.
So you can at least applaud those efforts, even if you don't agree with the tactics they used.
Right. They were trying to reform the whole jail system at the time, and it may have been misled in what we know now, but for the time they didn't know the problems that permanent solitary confinement would cause.
Right.
Well, pretty much all the prisons designed in the 1800s were based on one of two systems: the New York State Auburn system or the Pennsylvania system. And the Pennsylvania system is what we see with the Eastern State Penitentiary. Now, during the century following Eastern State's construction, more than 300 prisons in South America, Europe, Russia, China, Japan, and across the entire British Empire were based on this plan. So it was revolutionary to the point that many other countries decided they were going to do something very similar to this.
Yeah.
Now, people frequently traveled to Philadelphia to study the Eastern State Penitentiary and this Pennsylvania reform system. For a lot of people, Eastern State's distinctive form and its isolation practices became a symbol of progressive modern principles. But as tourists flocked to the penitentiary in the 1830s and 1840s, a debate grew around the effectiveness and compassion of solitary confinement. Was it cruel to hold, people in this state like that with no visitors from the outside world, with no books or letters from home? And they would ask also, is it right to keep anybody out of contact from anything from the outside world? Well, accounts and opinions varied on this, from people agreeing with it to people disagreeing with it. Well, the critics of this system eventually prevailed. Now, the Pennsylvania system was abandoned in 1913. Later additions to the pen, I'll just say pen, it's too hard to say penitentiary. Later additions to the pen complex are physical evidence of this shift in operations and practices. Now, Warden Michael Cassidy added the first additional cell blocks in the 1870s and 1890s, and they mirrored the existing cell blocks in design, but these new cells did not include an exercise yard. So prisoners were issued hoods, for the first time with eye holes.
They still get the hood, but you can see this time.
Right. And I guess the point is anonymity. Like, you could see out, but nobody can see you, and you can't see the face of these other people. And in that sense, if that's what you want, that's what you achieve with this. Now, they allowed prisoners to exercise together for the first time in the penitentiary's history, but they had to do it in silence and with these hoods on. So you can go exercise, but there's no talking, and you can't know anything about the other person. So mirrors were installed to provide continued surveillance into the new cell blocks from the central rotunda. So guards could sit in that rotunda and still see because of the mirror system that they had put up. The system of solitary confinement at Eastern State did not so much collapse, they say, as it eroded away over the decades. By 1890, about half of all prisoners had a cellmate, and people incarcerated at Eastern State worked in congregate workshops. So this was before Pennsylvania system was fully discontinued. But you see, we're starting to get to what we have today, where, you can interact with other people in that jail.
Mm-hmm.
So the penitentiary administration produced a silent movie in 1929 to celebrate the building's centennial. The film focuses on the recent changes made to the building, and it shows new factory-style weaving shops, the commercial-grade bakery and kitchen staffed with dozens of prisoners 24 hours a day. It shows the new guard towers that have searchlights and sirens. And, so it was a big thing at the time.
Yeah, imagine everybody is like, they move really fast, like those old baseball films,
Yeah, right.
Right. waving real fast. Hey, they're pointing at something because they can't talk.
Right.
Look at this. Look at this. Look
yeah,
at
hey,
this.
check it out.
They just keep waving their hand like they're on The Price is Right.
Mm-hmm.
A new car.
Right. No new cars here, Matt. Well,
a new toilet.
Yeah, there you go. And it flushes. The White House doesn't have this. Now, in this movie, you see people spilling out into yards and line up in new communal dining halls. The cells, now used for 2 or 3 men, still have barrel vaulted ceilings and skylights, but now they also have what they call a curious walled up door in the back because they don't have their private workout yards anymore. Now, the workshops and dining halls are 10 feet wide and 100 feet long, and they are former exercise yards that they roofed over, and they've got, removed all the dividing walls in between there, so it's the width of a cell, but then it just goes real long, so it's got to be a weird thing in these dining halls, I guess you make do. Instead of building something new, you just make do. And that's what they did. They blocked off all the entrances from the cells. Yeah. And you just then went down your whole long dining hall. I'd hate to be at the far end.
I know. It reminds me of, did you ever eat at the old Steak and Ale? You remember that restaurant?
Yeah.
Okay. And so it was all sectioned off in like little rooms. And I remember the one that was closest to my house. You'd go and there was a little hallway that would connect 2 larger rooms where there would be maybe multiple tables or a room with one big. Anyway, the little hallway had like a little table in there for like 2 people. And I remember thinking, this has got to be weird to get this table. And everybody just, the wait staff just keeps walking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Yeah.
It's like I remember there was an Italian restaurant that there was a table, like an old Italian restaurant. The newer version of it, they put a table in the kitchen, like a booth, and you're like in the kitchen.
That's weird.
It's like weird. It's just weird. But when you said that about that long dining hall, I got to thinking about those people that would have to sit in that hallway. It was like, This has got to be the weirdest table in this restaurant.
Yeah, right. And I bet it was, and it's like that here. If you got, if you were seated at the first little spot there on the, in that hallway, you had all these other people walking past you to go back to the back of the hallway, you know, and it just had to be weird.
It's how Landry's got their famous tagline for home of the throwed roll, because, it's like, pass the bread.
Yeah.
They just pick up, just hurl it down at the end of this hallway.
Right.
Like, we can't get down there, just here. They just throw it food down at you.
There's chairs in the way. Did you say you wanted soup? Nope, scratch the soup. I don't want any more soup. Change my mind. What is the softest thing you can serve me?
Oh, man. The corn on the cob flied, you know.
Yeah. Hey, put an eye out with a corn on the cob.
No, with butter. Throw it back.
Well, after all that, there were even more cell blocks that were constructed. Now, they were constructed with reinforced concrete now instead of the stone that they had been using. So they're starting to modernize a little more. Now, the new cells were small, square, and lit by ordinary windows, but the halls had the catwalks and skylights typical of the Eastern State cell blocks. Mm-hmm. So it kind of kept the same look, but not inside each cell. They were new, updated cells without that weird vaulted ceiling and stuff that these had. Now, these new cell blocks were invisible from the central rotunda. So for the first time, you don't have a cell block that you can see sitting in that one chair. So the guards would have to get up and walk around. Now, subterranean and windowless cells with neither light or plumbing were built in order to bring back that solitary confinement there. This time, the isolation was not like redemptive in quality. They didn't think at this time that it was going to change a person. This was brought back for punishment. Yeah. So the cells there were nicknamed Klondike. So if you got put in a solitary confinement cell, they said you were going down to Klondike. Now, the last major addition was made to Eastern State Penitentiary's complex of buildings in 1956. This was cell block 15, which was death row. Now, this modern prison block marked the final abandonment of any aspect of the penitentiary's original architecture. So the fully electronic confinement system inside separated the prisoners from the guards at pretty much all times. So this was brand new, state-of-the-art jailing there where you were, put if they considered you to be a death row inmate. You went there to the newest of the cells, cell block 15.
Yeah.
So if you look up maps of this place, find the one that's got the cell blocks numbered, and cell block 15 is going to be your death row area. Mm. There were a lot of people held at Eastern State Penitentiary over the years, and they have a list of what they consider the notable inmates. And I thought we should go over some of these. So the first one is Alphonse Scarface Capone. You heard of that guy, Matt?
A few times.
Yeah.
Look, I've seen the Untouchables.
Well, old Scarface Capone was Chicago's most famous mob boss. He spent 8 months at the Eastern State Penitentiary in 1929 and 1930. He was arrested for carrying a concealed deadly weapon, and this was Capone's first prison sentence. So the first time he ever went to prison was here at the Eastern State. His time in Eastern State was spent in, they say, relative luxury. His cell on the Park Avenue block had fine furniture, oriental rugs, and a cabinet radio. So try to get that at any other prison at the time. You could not. Now, Victor Babe Andreolli was convicted of killing a Pennsylvania state trooper in 1937, and Andreolli arrived at Eastern State Penitentiary to serve a life sentence for first-degree murder. He escaped in 1943, apparently by hiding in a delivery truck that was leaving the prison. Several weeks later, the police caught up to Andreolli in a Chester, Pennsylvania diner where he was shot in the head. Now,
nice. Ugh.
Yeah. Morris the Rabbi Bulber was another one. And
the Rabbi, what a nickname.
The Rabbi. Yeah. That was my nickname in college.
The Rabbi.
It wasn't. I made that up. Bulber entered Eastern State in 1942, and he was serving a life sentence as a member of an arsenic murder ring located in Philadelphia. Called, quote, a veteran witch doctor and compounder of charms, Bulber was one of the leaders of the group. Now, they appealed to women who were willing to murder husbands. Arsenic was not the only method that they used, though. Now, in order to collect on their husbands' insurance policies, these women would kill their husbands, and the rabbi would facilitate all that. Now, between 1932 and 1937, the group was responsible for the deaths of at least 30 people. 16 men and women were convicted for participating in the syndicate, including Bulber and Horace Perlman, who also served time at the Eastern State for these murders. So, interesting. Now, Leo Callahan is another one, and they say of the approximate 100 inmates to escape from the Eastern State, Leo Callahan is the only one that got away with it. Assault and battery with intent to kill brought Callahan to Eastern State, and a makeshift wooden ladder is what got him out. So in 1923, Callahan and 5 other inmates built a ladder that they used to scale the east wall of the penitentiary. His 5 accomplices were all eventually recaptured, but Callahan is still at large. But they say he'd be 110 years old now, so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, he lived out his days after he escaped. My question is how do you build and hide a makeshift ladder that's tall enough to get over a prison wall?
That's my question, too.
How does someone not notice that? Or maybe they did. Maybe they had some help on the inside.
I would think they had to have paid somebody off.
Yeah, I mean,
to look the other way.
You know, you would have to be moving pretty quick if you were just going to gather the materials and then assemble this thing quickly enough to get out. And then you get to the top and you're like, old Joe, who was responsible for that end of the ladder, he got lazy or didn't pay attention and didn't fasten the whatever you were using for rungs. The next thing you know, you're falling down.
Right.
It's like, well, yeah, I was like, wow, you know, that seems like you had to have some help to be able to do something like that. Somebody was looking the other way.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. You either had help or, like you said, you had ignorance. People were intentionally ignorant to what you were doing for money or something like that.
Look at those 5 guys walking all stiff-legged. Wonder what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And walking like penguins.
They're hiding their part of the ladder, dummy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, female inmates, they say, were part of the landscape at Eastern State Penitentiary for almost 100 years, and Frida Frost was the last of them. Now, she was transferred to the Muncie Industrial Home for Women in 1923, and Frost's departure marked the end of an era. Frost had been serving a 20-year sentence for murder because she had poisoned her husband. Maybe in that ring that we were talking about before. I couldn't find that out or not. But Frida Frost was the last female inmate to be housed at Eastern State Penitentiary in 1923. Now, William Francis Slick Willy Sutton. That's my favorite name on this whole list.
Slick Willy.
William Francis Slick Willy Sutton. He was one of the most famous bank robbers in American history. Slick Willy spent 11 years at Eastern State Penitentiary. Now, in 1945, he, along with 11 other prisoners, escaped from Eastern State in an inmate-dug tunnel that went almost 100 feet underground. Now, Sutton was recaptured just minutes later, so he didn't do very good at this. But over the course of his criminal career, Sutton is credited with over 50 bank robberies, 3 successful prison escapes, and over 30 years served behind bars. He didn't die until 1980.
Man, and he got out 3 times.
He escaped 3 times and re-escaped. No, that's not how you'd say that.
Was recaptured.
Yeah, was recaptured. But yeah, those were some of the more notable prisoners that they say spent time there. And I mean, some of those, they just had an interesting story, like Frida Frost being the last female prisoner there. And some you would know, like Alphonse Capone, because he's pretty famous. Now, that wasn't his last prison sentence.
Not by a long shot.
That was just his first. But, they got a claim to fame there by saying that Al Capone stayed at their prison. It's like saying he spent the night, in your hotel. Al Capone spent some time here at Eastern State.
So even though Eastern State Penitentiary was famous for coming up with this idea on how to reform prisoners and keeping them apart and looking at the system differently, over the years, it wasn't immune to the harsh punishments that the other prison systems had. And the harsh punishments at Eastern State were, I mean, harsh is an understatement. I mean, let's face it. Yeah. But it, going into this, it kind of gives you an idea of, the torment that some of the population had to endure during their stay. One was the water bath. Now,
that sounds nice.
It sounds nice. It wasn't nice at all. Oh. It rhymes with nice. The inmates who would break the rules, they risked being dunked in a bath of ice cold water and then hung from a wall for the night. Now, during the winter months, when this punishment was the most popular, the water on the inmate's skin would form a layer of ice before morning. I can't even imagine that they would survive this.
No, I mean, you would become hypothermic, and I would bet that first thing in the morning you could like break people's nipples with the water hanging on and just frozen. And did they do that, Matt?
I didn't find that. At least nothing that specific. To come up with something that specific, you gotta be a certain kind of person, Adam.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you didn't say what kind.
Well, the next one was the Mad Chair. The Mad Chair was named because it was not uncommon for an inmate to go mad before his punishment ended. Inmates would be strapped into the chair with leather straps so tightly that it would be impossible for them to make even the smallest of movements. And they would sit in the chair for days without food until the circulation in their body almost stopped from the tightness of the straps and the lack of movement. It would actually cause amputations.
Oh, wow.
They would be required.
That was tight. Wow.
After being in the chair. Yeah.
So basically a tourniquet then.
Yeah, essentially, they strap you in so tight, they cut off circulation and, you just develop, essentially a necrotic limb that they have to amputate. I'd be like, at that point, just let me die,
Yeah, right. Just do that here. But is that what the Alice in Chains song is about?
I don't know.
No, that was Angry Chair. Never mind.
Angry Chair.
Not Mad Chair.
Yeah. Angry Chair is different.
Yeah.
Wasn't quite as bad.
Yeah. Not quite as bad. It was one step below the Mad Chair.
Now, the next one was the Iron Gag. Now, the Iron Gag was the most deadly punishment, and it was specifically designed for those inmates who refused to obey the no communication policy. An iron collar was clamped onto the tongue of the inmate, and then it was chained to his wrists, which were strapped high behind their back. Now picture that. You've got a clamp on your tongue, and now it's chained to these shackles on your wrists and then put way up behind your back. So any movement at all resulted in tearing of the tongue and severe bleeding. So many of the inmates who suffered this torture died from blood loss before their punishment was actually over.
Man. We've talked about that in a Patreon episode with the weird like torture devices from way back, and we didn't come up with this one, but my question remains the same. How do you come up with this stuff?
Right.
Like that device, who comes up with that?
Quakers, apparently.
Apparently so. Quaker inspired. Don't eat that oatmeal, y'all.
I don't know that. I'm being facetious, but yeah, you're right. I mean, somebody had to sit there and think of what's a good way to teach these people a lesson about not talking.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's chain their tongue to their hands and then tie their hands behind their back somehow.
And if they move at all,
it'll rip their tongue. Well,
and that's such a weird position too, to like how to come up with that position that my hands have to be like this, and it just, I don't know. It
really
seems weird to me,
and cruel and unusual. But the last one is the hole, which was dug under block 14, and the hole was really nothing but a pit in the ground where some inmates would stay locked, sometimes for weeks. There was no light, very little air, and those that were thrown into the pit would receive water and a slice of bread. And that's if they got to it before the rats and the roaches did.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean,
Do you know
spend a night in the box.
Yeah, right. Do you know why people got bread and water?
Why?
Like, it wasn't we're going to give them just something that's bland and not very nutritional or whatever. They figured out that if you feed them enough bread and water and that's all that they get, it becomes like a plug in your intestines.
Oh, yeah.
And so then not only are you in discomfort from the room that you're in or whatever torture, but now you've got internal pain that because you're blocked up from this basically cement that bread and water created. So, people say, I give them bread and water as kind of a joke for, being in jail. But there was a specific reason they did that. It wasn't just here's some cheap bread and whatever. It in itself was a torture device.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Lord. So you can kind of see, what these people had to endure and why you might think, I bet that old prison might be haunted. I mean, as Adam said, there were some people that were just executed right there, and so many people died from these punishments. There was so much death along with the anguish. We bring this up when we talk about negative energy, wanting to hold on to, these past horrors, and it allows the manifestation of this paranormal activity that so many people claim goes on, at Eastern State. Now, one of the most notable stories comes from a man named Gary Johnson. Now, Gary helped maintain the old broken down locks at the prison. Now, in the early 1990s, he had just opened the 140-year-old lock from the cell door in cell block 4 when he says that a massive force gripped him so tightly that he was unable to move. Now, Gary described a negative, horrible energy that exploded out of the cell. He said tormented faces appeared on the cell walls, and that one form in particular actually seemed to be beckoning to him. Now,
wow.
Some people believe that when he removed the key, it opened a gateway to the horrific past and offered the spirits that were caught behind its bars a way out.
I can see that, yeah.
And so there are some who think that this just essentially opened a portal. And that allowed all of this horror to kind of replay inside the walls of the prison.
Right. It's like they were bound. And then when he did that, it released their bindings. That's interesting. I like that.
Cell block 12 is known for echoing voices and cackling. As cell block 6 is known for shadowy figures that move along the walls. A cell block 4, where Gary Johnson's experience occurred, is known for visions of ghostly faces, much like what he experienced.
Mm-hmm.
So some people have reported seeing a silhouette of a guard in one of the towers. Okay, now Jack Osborne and Katrina Weidman on their show Portals to Hell interviewed a self-proclaimed skeptic named Zach. And he told...
Not bagels, I assume.
No. This is a regular guy.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, he was a self-proclaimed skeptic. He said he didn't believe in ghosts and wasn't really convinced of anything paranormal. Now, Zach claimed that he felt, while he was staying there, he felt something hard against his back. Now, assuming that he had bumped into a wall in the dark, he turned around, but he didn't see anything. Now, when he turned back, Zach says he heard a giggle behind him. A giggle. We haven't had too many giggling ghosts.
No.
That's kind of creepy.
Yeah, that makes it weird.
But Zach says a few seconds later, he heard a voice say, "Watch your back." Now facing a closed door, Zach said he saw a face with two dark eyes. And he says that's pretty much when the fear set in. And he said he did not sleep that night. And this experience turned him from a skeptic into a believer.
Yeah.
Well,
I can see that. Yep.
Who wouldn't believe after something like that?
Right.
I mean, that's
wild.
Yeah.
Just simply to have a spirit say, "Watch your back," even without all the other stuff, that would give you enough of the heebie-jeebies to, make you not sleep or whatever. But to see the face, and I mean, the faces seem to be prevalent here.
Yes.
And it's crazy. That's creepy. That's creepy.
Yeah. I don't want to see, a ghost face.
No.
On the wall or anywhere else.
Yeah, random face.
Yeah, Now, one thing to know and to keep in mind is that the history and the hauntings of the prison is celebrated, okay? And they have actually created a haunted house attraction inside the prison. Okay, so there's actually an entertainment value that's placed on this prison beyond just taking the regular tour. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Now Amy Holloman is the creative director and the GM of Terror Behind the Walls, which is the name of the haunted attraction that operates inside the prison. And she had been working at Eastern State for about 13 seasons when she had her own paranormal experience. Now, Amy says, quote, "All of a sudden, in the back area of the room we were in, we started to hear these sounds, like a person was stamping something and then moving a paper over repeatedly. Then we heard the sound of a cup move. These were independent sounds," Amy says, "that lasted for about 15 seconds. Now she says that doesn't seem like that long of a time, but imagine if something is terrifying you. That's pretty long.
15 seconds is a long time.
Yeah, she said she literally learned what the word petrified meant. She said she was frozen stiff. Now, I've been there. I've been at that point where something, I don't know that it was real, but whatever it was, it scared me that I felt like I couldn't move.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, and I've done it to myself.
Sure, yeah.
I imagined something and it absolutely terrifies me because my brain says whatever's there is going to get you.
Yeah, I remember I got that as a kid when I was probably Michael's age, so around the 9-10 years old. And for some reason, I had this fear that someone was going to break into our house through my window. I would get stabbed, and then they would go on to rob and all this stuff. I don't know where this fear came from, but I do remember having this fear. And one night there was a sound outside the window. I don't know. It could have been a cat. I don't know what it was, but it was a sound. And I just knew at that point that it was a burglar coming in. I couldn't do anything. I was so scared that you would think natural reaction would be jump up, run away. If that's what you think is going to happen, go run and get dad, you know?
Yeah.
But no, I couldn't move. I was just frozen. And my dumb butt ended up falling asleep, scared.
Yeah.
But I don't know how it happened. But yeah, so I've been there. I remember that feeling.
Yeah. You ever get scared like that as a kid, and then you fall asleep and you wake up and then you remember being scared and it scares you all over?
Yeah, right. Yep. You go back to being scared.
Oh, it's over now, but I'm still scared.
Yeah. I'm still scared. I can't believe I fell asleep, you know?
Yeah. But, Amy isn't the only one in the Terror Behind the Walls crew that's had a run-in with a spirit inside the prison. She tells the story of a cast member who was working on cell block. He was working on cell block 12, which is reportedly one of the most active areas in the prison. Amy says the actor asked if he could move his spot. And when she asked him why, the actor said that there was a ghost up there. Can you imagine you're dressed up like a ghost and you come down, can I move? There's a ghost up there.
Yeah, I'm dealing with a ghost, so.
He said that while standing at the edge of the cell block, he saw the spirit of a woman running toward him screaming. And when she got close to him, she would turn back.
Wow.
Now, this is the cool part. 3 years later, it's like SpongeBob, 3 years later, a totally different actor came to her with a similar story about the second floor of cell block 12 being haunted. How many times am I going to trip over the word cell block?
Cell block.
Now, that actor said, "You'll never believe this, but I think it was a banshee. It was flying down the cell block towards me screaming, and then it turned back." So, 2 stories that are so similar 3 years apart from different individuals. And not only that, we're not talking about, people that probably worked together for 3 years. There's a really good chance that, these people were hired on every season. So there's a good chance that these 2 people never met.
Exactly. And they had no idea who the other one was.
And never heard the story. So now you're getting a very similar story, 3 years apart from 2 different people. That, I love that.
Oh, yeah.
That makes me want to believe this story more than any of the ones we cover tonight.
Yep, I agree with you.
Because when you get a story that's that similar and there's now I don't know this for sure, but the chance to me is slim that these 2 guys knew one another and could have told this story. But that's great. I mean, to me that's a fantastic story. When you have some validity there. Now, Holloman goes on and tells a story about a letter that they received in the mail along with a strange package. The letter was from a former visitor to the prison, and it explained that during their visit, they had taken a bolt from the site. It went on to say that since that time, they had experienced the worst luck of their entire life. The package included the bolt in a bag full of sage and a request to return it to its rightful place. Now, how many times have we heard stories like this? I was just about to say, how many times has Graveyard Tales told you not to take anything from a haunted place? Right. Yeah, don't take anything like that and go, hey, I've got this cool little trinket that I stole
souvenir
from a haunted house. or a haunted prison in this case. You don't want to do that kind of stuff.
Oh, that's a bad idea, guys.
You're gonna drag along at the least some bad juju.
Mm-hmm.
But we've talked about objects that become haunted or cursed, and that have something attached to them. Folks, even if you're in something and you don't believe this place is haunted at all, don't take anything with you. It's like it's like the gift shop in Gettysburg that sold the gifts that were left for the ghost children.
Yeah, exactly.
I said something about getting Brooks a baseball, or I'd gotten Brooks a baseball, and one day we're in the car and he goes, "Hey, did you didn't happen to get that baseball from that Gettysburg shop, did you?" And I laughed, and then I was like, "Why?"
Yeah. What's happening? What do you mean? Yeah, no, I mean, and that's true. I mean, if you take nothing else away from Graveyard Tales, at least understand that if a place is supposedly haunted, do not remove anything from those grounds, because every time someone does, there's a story of them sending it back.
Right.
And wanting to, basically make their whole life better just from this bolt or, whatever. I lucked out as a kid because there was a haunted railroad track not too far from where I'm at now that haunted, in quotes, for those of you not watching, and I did air quotes, turns out it wasn't. It was just dumb, local legend that area was haunted. It's one of those Gravity Hill type situations where your car would get pushed over thing and supposedly uphill, but it wasn't. But we took a railroad spike and one of the basically railroad bolts from there, and I still have them. So luckily it was not haunted, or my dumb butt, this is before I learned all of the important knowledge that I have now about doing that, but it could have ended up bad, but luckily it didn't.
We should do a show where we just do things not to do.
Yeah.
These are bad ideas.
Right.
Did you remember there was a skit on Saturday Night Live years and years ago for these jeans, and it was bad idea jeans.
Yeah.
They were all like, they were like, yeah, well, I did this. It's like, bad idea jeans.
There's a Simpsons episode where he's got a book that says, "Don't do what Donnie Don't does." And, and it'd be the title of that Graveyard Tales episode, "Don't do what Donnie Don't does."
Yeah. For any of you artists out there, we've got so many that belong to the graveyard that have drawn some amazing stuff for us. The old Goofus and Gallant from the Highlights magazine. We need a Goofus and Gallant for Graveyard Tales. It's like they're burning a Ouija board. They're taking a picture of Robert the Doll.
Right.
Don't do that.
Taking a bolt from Eastern State Penitentiary.
Right. That's what we need. Now, as I said, Amy's not the, she's not the only one that's experienced this. So all these stories aren't coming from her. We had stories from a couple of actors, but other staff members have had some pretty strange encounters too. Technical director James Travis had his own moment with a spirit. Now, James says that it was close to midnight on a rainy and windy Friday during the fall of the year 2012. He said there was an event that evening, and all of the other guests and staff had left the property. Now, Travis says he noticed a large steel panel that had been delivered for him in the building's gatehouse, and he wanted to move it out of the way and decided to take it. Guess where? Cell block 12.
Where? Oh, good idea.
The most active, in the whole prison.
Yeah.
Now, Travis says, I planned to put it just inside the gate there, but the dolly kept sliding out of the way, so I had to use both hands to get the gate unlocked. Now, Travis says he knew everyone else had left the property. Now, Adam, let's talk about something here.
Okay.
If I am ever at a haunted prison, especially one like Eastern State, I never want to be able to honestly say the sentence, I knew everyone else had left the property.
No joke. No joke.
I mean, seriously, in all fairness, that would never happen to me. Because if I knew there was a potential for me to say that, I would make sure that I would never be able to say that.
Right.
I would always be able to say, I knew there was no way in hell that I was going to be the last one left on the property.
Right.
I mean, it's one thing to go and like hang out at a haunted prison. It's another thing to be the only one there. I mean,
Especially when it's this active, with that type of activity and in the strength of the spirits that are supposedly there, I'm with you. I'm not doing that. There's no way.
Yeah.
I will always be yelling for somebody. Hey, where you at? Doing the Marco Polo thing. Marco.
Exactly.
Marco.
Oh, you do that, you might get the polo.
That's true.
Like, I'm out.
Yep. Watch your back. Nope. Done.
Yeah. Fish out of water. Here we go. But anyway, Travis said that when he turned around, he expected to see like some kind of vagrant or somebody that had wandered up the property just to cause some trouble. But instead, he saw a short man, only about 5'4", standing a few feet away from him. And Travis said he drew back his fist, but then realized that the man was translucent. Yeah, put up your dukes.
Yeah.
And he not only was he translucent, he was dressed in Civil War era military clothing. And then he disappeared.
And if that guy's learned anything, you can't punch a ghost.
You can't punch a ghost. Your fists are useless against a ghost. So, that these are great stories. I mean,
yeah.
Adam and I were talking before the show that I love when we can find stories that the eyewitness actually is named. I mean, you get all the a visitor to this place saw this. I'm like, okay, well, great. We're gonna mention that, but I really love it when it says, Joe Jackson, was visiting the Eastern State Penitentiary and he saw this, and he felt like that. And I mean, that's what I
on
that's
this
what I
day at this time.
Yeah.
So the verification of the date and the person, it makes it all the more real to you.
Yeah.
You feel the interaction or the sighting a whole lot more. And like you said, it makes you believe it more. You, for some reason, I guess because of the specifics of it, you believe it a whole lot more than just my brother, sister's, aunt's, cousin's friend, the guy with the limp. He saw it.
Yeah.
And
well, it becomes less like hearsay. It becomes less like just the stories that get passed along. Oh, they say. Well, who's they? I love it when you have somebody, because if I know this, if I'm going to attach my name to a story, especially one like this, it's going to be at least the truth from my eyes. I'm going to tell you what happened to me. Maybe you can interpret it however you want, but I'm going to tell you what I saw. If it's going to carry my name on it, then it's going to be what really happened. So I love that. And Eastern State, had a ton of those stories, and we're happy to share them with you. It is a pretty creepy place. You can see a lot of pictures of it online. You can see pictures of the cell blocks, pictures taken from the outside. You can see that definite castle appearance that prisons that were built in that time carried. And they've done up some of it. You see some that are set up like little offices and things like that, that have furniture and furnishings that are, period accurate. So you can kind of get a feel of what it would have looked like then, not now that it's, a lot of the area is just kind of crumbling apart. Now, as Adam mentioned before, you can take the free Voices of Eastern State audio tour, where you essentially put on headphones and you go through and it tells you a story. Now, this is super cool. That tour is narrated by Steve Buscemi from Boardwalk Empire and all the Adam Sandler movies.
Yeah.
Now,
that's pretty cool that he did that.
Yeah. Now, Steve Buscemi shot his film Animal Factory in the prison, and the audio includes clips from historians, former guards, and inmates of the penitentiary. So
that's cool.
Man, that's super cool to me. I mean, that's it, and it's free. And it's free. I mean, it would be worth, a few bucks to be able to take this tour, but the fact that it's offered for free and it's so cool, if you live in that area and you haven't done this, maybe you didn't realize that it was available, and, go check that out. I mean,
absolutely go do it.
That's amazing. And then especially, I would imagine if you're in that area, you've probably, taken advantage of the Halloween season haunted house. But this any time of year you can go and take this tour. Now, the prison itself has appeared in several films, and two of the most notable ones. It was in the movie Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen, and it served as the insane asylum in the Brad Pitt movie 12 Monkeys.
Wow.
So I mean it's kind of like the Nashville prison. Here, it was in it was in the Last Castle, and the Green Mile, because these buildings are so cool. I mean, they just look all, unfortunately, the prison here, it took some storm damage, just recently, and that you can't even get near it anymore. You can,
that's a shame.
You can see it from the highway, but that's about it. You can't really get close to it at all. And they don't offer tours. And I think even when they did, because of the asbestos in it, you couldn't go anywhere but in the main hall. So,
right.
But this one, you can really take, a great tour. So I would definitely check that out, especially if this kind of stuff interests you. Not just like, Adam, gave us a lot of really fascinating and interesting history about the building. So it kind of gives you an idea about the activity that would potentially go on there. But as we've done, I don't know what now, maybe half a dozen haunted prisons, maybe not quite that much, but we've done 3 or 4. And they always have really, scary, creepy, stories, because you learn that history behind what went on there. It makes the idea of seeing a shadow in a cell block or hearing a sound from, down what is an empty hallway, that more terrifying, because the potential of somebody's spirit that's lingering around there that could have been, executed or tortured to death. I don't know. It just gives it all that much more, shock value, maybe, is what I'm looking for.
Yeah. It carries more weight than other noises you would hear at other places.
Yeah, absolutely. So, thanks for listening, guys. I mean, we really enjoyed researching this one, and thanks to Jeff, who gave us a lot of really good information about Eastern State. And if you're in that area, like I said, go check it out. And if you do, if you've been there, as we say this on every show, let us know. I mean, we have gotten some amazing photos from people who have either been there in the past or who have listened to a show and made an effort to visit one of these places while they were on vacation.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love that.
I mean, we love that maybe we told you about a place that you didn't know, and you put it on your list of places that you wanted to see. So yeah, if you've done that, send in those photographs, and the perfect place to do that and share it, not just with Adam and myself, but with all the other members of the graveyard, is our Facebook group. We're over 5,000 members strong now. And it's really a fantastic group of folks. We have a lot of fun in there. There's a lot of conversations. Adam and I pop in and out of there and make a lot of comments. So yeah, jump on in. All you have to do is get on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter and search for Graveyard Tales. That's going to be the easiest way to find us. And
you'll find us.
And you can find out, all kinds of stuff, and you can meet some other members of the graveyard. And while you're doing that, you can check out our website. It's graveyardpodcast.com. And on our website, you can learn a little bit more about Adam and myself. You can listen to the show. You can become a patron, which we always want to thank the people that have donated to the show. And if you've been thinking about pulling the trigger and join it, now's a great time. We've just uploaded, the video from Adam and I, mucking through this to put out a solid edited show that we're going to give to you guys. You get to see us screw it up and goof off, and you get to see me pick my nose in the middle of the show and all that kind of stuff. If you enjoy that kind of stuff, joining Patreon is a way to get that video of us actually doing this. And right. You can also find links to buy Graveyard Tales merchandise, and if you're needing to to get that cool summer T-shirt or that travel mug, or what you're gonna drink your frosty beverage by the pool, you can grab you can grab a Graveyard Tales cup, mug, T-shirt, baby onesie, whatever you need, and you can find those links there. As we always say, please go and rate and review us on iTunes, because it's the easiest way to get the show up the charts, which makes Adam and I feel good, but it brings more people into the graveyard. And that's what we want. So until next time, we'll save you a seat in the graveyard.
See you soon.
Now, Cellbot,
I hear you.